The room was cold and white. Everything in it was white except for the metal table and two chairs. One chair held a human woman with dark hair and tired eyes. The other chair held something that looked like it came from nightmares. Zekthara sat, with his 4 arms chained to the table. His blue skin had scars that ran from his neck to his hands. His large black eyes kept moving around the room like he expected danger to come from anywhere. The chains were not there to keep him from hurting anyone. They were there to stop his hands from shaking. Lisa Morgan looked at her camera crew and nodded. The red light came on. She had done many interviews before, but never with an alien who had fought against humans. 3 months had passed since the HFY War ended. This was the first time any Zephyrian soldier agreed to talk about what happened. "State your name and rank for the record," Lisa said in a calm voice. The alien's voice came out like broken glass. "Commander Zekthara of the 3rd Fleet, former commander. Now I am nothing." Lisa wrote something on her pad. "Tell us about the first time you encountered human forces." Zekthara closed his eyes. His hands tried to make fists, but the chains stopped him. "We thought you were like the others. 17 worlds we had taken before yours. All of them fought the same way. Honor, rules, surrender when defeat was clear." The alien opened his eyes and looked directly at the camera. "We were wrong about everything." Lisa waited. She had learned that silence made people talk more than questions. "The High Command sent me to study your military before the war began," Zekthara continued. "We watched your ships. We counted your weapons. We saw your cities and thought we understood your strength. We did not look at your history." The reporter leaned forward slightly. "What do you mean?" "Your species fights itself. Always fighting. We thought this made you weak. We thought divided people could not stand against united Zephyrian forces." Zekthara's voice got quieter. "We did not understand that fighting yourself for thousands of years makes you very good at fighting others." Lisa made another note. Outside the room, she could hear the hum of the space station. Kepler Prime was neutral ground, the only place where humans and Zephyrians could meet safely. "Tell me about Titan's Edge," she said. The alien's whole body went stiff. "The mining colony. It should have been simple. Captain Jake Murphy had 50 soldiers. We had 500. The rules of war say you surrender when odds are 10 to 1 against you." But they didn't surrender. No. Zekthara's voice was barely a whisper. "They did not surrender. They did something else. Something we had never seen before." The camera kept rolling. Lisa could see sweat forming on the alien's blue skin, even though the room was cold. "Murphy's people went into the tunnels, under the colony. We followed them. That was our first mistake. The tunnels were full of traps, not military traps, things made from mining equipment. Explosive charges connected to door handles, cables stretched across walkways to trip our soldiers. Poisonous. Gas from the mining operation pumped into air vents." Zekthara stopped talking and stared at the table. His breathing got faster. "What happened next?" Lisa asked gently. "We learned that humans do not fight like soldiers. They fight like animals protecting their young. Every human was a weapon. The cook knew how to make bombs from kitchen supplies. The mechanic turned repair tools into killing devices. Children as young as 12 were carrying messages between resistance groups." The alien looked up at Lisa with those large black eyes. "Do you know what your Captain Murphy said when we finally caught him?" Lisa shook her head. "He was bleeding from 5 wounds. Half his men were dead. The colony was lost. We had him surrounded, with no way to escape." He looked at me and smiled. Zekthara's chains rattled as he tried to move his hands. He smiled and said, "See you in hell, boys." And then he pressed a button. What button? The entire colony exploded. Everything. The mines, the factories, the living areas, the spaceport. Murphy had rigged the whole place to blow up rather than let us have it. He killed himself and 30 of my soldiers just to deny us a victory. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. That was the first battle? The first of many like it. We took the colony, but got nothing from it. Just a crater where buildings used to be. That night I sent a report to the High Command. I told them that humans do not fight for victory. They fight to make sure their enemies cannot win either. The alien was quiet for a long moment. The only sound was the hum of the station's life support systems. My commanders did not believe my report. They said I was making excuses for taking too long to capture one small colony. They said humans were just desperate and would learn proper warfare after a few defeats. Zekthara looked at the camera again. They were wrong. Humans did not learn our kind of warfare. We learned theirs, and it broke us. Lisa checked her notes. She had dozens more questions, but she could see that the alien was getting tired. His scars seemed to hurt more when he talked about the war. "We'll continue tomorrow," she said to the camera crew. The red light went off. As the humans packed up their equipment, Zekthara spoke again. "Miss Morgan, why are you doing this interview?" Lisa paused. "People need to know what happened. Both sides need to understand." The alien nodded slowly. "Tomorrow I will tell you about New Denver, about Colonel Amy Rodriguez and what your people did there. But I warn you, some truths are harder to hear than others." "We'll be ready," Lisa said. But as she left the White Room and walked through the corridors of Kepler Prime, she wondered if anyone could ever be ready for the truth about human warfare. The way Zekthara had described it, humans did not just fight wars. They became war itself. She looked out a window at the stars. Somewhere out there were human colonies rebuilding from the conflict. Somewhere else were Zephyrian worlds doing the same. Both species were trying to heal from what had happened between them. But first, the galaxy needed to understand how it had happened at all. The next day, Lisa Morgan returned to the White Room. Zekthara was already there, sitting in the same chair with the same chains. His scars looked darker today. The alien had not slept well. Lisa set up her equipment and turned on the camera. The red light came on again. "Yesterday you mentioned New Denver," she said. "Tell me about that battle." Zekthara was quiet for a long time. He stared at his chained hands like they belonged to someone else. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, softer, more afraid. "New Denver was where we learned that winning against humans is impossible. Even when you beat them, they still find ways to hurt you." The alien took a deep breath. "Kepler 442b was an important world for your people. Big cities, farms, factories. Our fleet had 20,000 soldiers. The humans had maybe 3,000. Defenders led by Colonel Amy Rodriguez." Lisa wrote the name down. She had heard of Rodriguez before. The woman was famous even among humans. "The attack should have been easy," Zekthara continued. "We had better ships, more soldiers, bigger weapons. Our battle computers said we would win in 6 hours with minimal losses." How long did it actually take? 3 weeks, and we lost 8,000 soldiers. The alien's chains rattled as his hands started shaking again. "But the numbers do not tell the real story. The real story is what your people did to my soldiers' minds." Lisa leaned forward. This was what she had come to hear. "Colonel, Rodriguez did not fight like any military commander we had studied. She turned the entire planet into a weapon. Every building, every vehicle, every piece of technology became part of her army." Zekthara closed his eyes and continued. "We landed near the main city expecting organized resistance. Instead, we found chaos. Human soldiers who did not wear uniforms, citizens who fought like soldiers, soldiers who dressed like citizens. We could not tell who was dangerous and who was innocent." The reporter made notes as fast as she could write. "On the second day of fighting, one of my sergeants told me about a human he had captured. The human was young, maybe 20 years old. He was injured badly but kept smiling. My sergeant asked him why he was smiling while bleeding. The human said, 'Because now you have to carry me, feed me, and guard me. That's 3 of your soldiers who can't fight anymore. Lisa felt her stomach turn a little. He was happy to be captured? Happy to be useful to his side, even as a prisoner. This is not how civilized beings think about war. Zekathara opened his eyes and looked at the camera. But it gets worse. The alien continued his story. We had taken most of the city by the end of the first week. Our commanders were happy. Then the real fighting started. What do you mean? The humans we thought we had defeated were still fighting. They came out of sewers, basements, hidden rooms, and buildings we thought were empty. They attacked our supply lines, our medical stations, our communication centers. They used our own captured weapons against us. Zekthara's voice got quieter. Again. I watched Sergeant Billy Chen weld himself into a damaged mech suit. The suit was broken and leaking radiation. It would kill him in minutes. But Chen turned it into a guided missile and crashed it into our command ship. He was laughing over the radio as he died. Lisa stopped writing. Laughing? Humans laugh when they are afraid. They laugh when they are angry. They laugh when they are dying. We did not understand this. To us, laughter means joy. We thought humans were enjoying the war. The room was very quiet. Lisa could hear her own heartbeat. Then there was Private Katie Walsh, Zekathara continued. She was trapped in a bunker that was falling down. My soldiers had surrounded it. She could have surrendered and lived. Instead, she stayed behind to blow up the tunnel system under the city. She used herself as a trigger for the explosives. The alien looked directly at Lisa. Do you know what she said over the radio before she died? Lisa shook her head. She said, "Tell my mom I kept my promise." What promise makes a young person choose death over surrender? Lisa felt tears starting in her eyes, but she kept the camera rolling. My soldiers started having nightmares after the first week. Zephyrian warriors do not have nightmares. We are trained from birth to be brave in battle. But humans changed that. Zekthara's whole body seemed to slump in the chair. They started dreaming about humans who smiled while dying, about enemies who turned their own deaths into weapons, about soldiers who treated capture like a tactical victory. The alien was quiet for a moment. Then he continued with the hardest part of his story. We captured Captain Rick Stone on day 10 of the battle. He was wounded, but not badly. During his interrogation, he told us things that made our interrogators sick. What kind of things? He told us about your history, about wars you fought against each other. Places called Vietnam and Stalingrad and Iwo Jima. He described battles where humans died by the thousands just to take a single hill or building. He talked about it like it was normal. Zekthara looked up at the ceiling. Stone said that fighting us was easy compared to fighting other humans. He said we were too nice, too honorable. He said we followed rules that made us predictable. Lisa felt a chill. What else did he say? He said that every human child learns about war in school. They study battles like other species study mathematics. He said humans had been preparing for interstellar war by fighting each other for 10,000 years. The alien's chains made noise as he tried to move his hands. Stone laughed during his interrogation. He said we were not fighting an army. We were fighting a species that had turned warfare into an art form. Lisa looked at her notes. She had filled several pages already. How did the battle end? Colonel Rodriguez activated something called a Scorched Earth Protocol. Instead of letting us take the planet intact, the humans destroyed everything useful. They poisoned the water supplies. They burned the farms. They collapsed the mines. They turned New Denver into a wasteland. Zekthara's voice got very quiet. We won the battle but gained nothing. The planet was useless to us. And my soldiers were broken. They had nightmares about humans who preferred to destroy their own world rather than let enemies have it. The reporter turned off her camera for a moment. Are you okay to continue? The alien nodded. I must finish this story. Others need to understand what humans are capable of. Lisa turned the camera back on. After New Denver, the High Command finally started listening to my reports. They realized that humans do not fight for territory or resources like other species. They fight for principles that are more important to them than life itself. Zekathara looked directly into the camera lens. We had conquered 17 worlds. Before we met humans, all of those species eventually accepted defeat when the cost became too high. Humans are different. The higher the cost, the more determined they become. The alien paused and then spoke his final words for the day. New Denver taught us that humans cannot be beaten by traditional warfare. They can only be avoided or completely destroyed. There is no middle ground with your species. And complete destruction means they will take you with them. Lisa turned off the camera and sat in silence for a moment. Tomorrow we talk about Proxima Centauri, Zekathara said. Tomorrow, you will understand why my people chose to surrender rather than face what humans call total war. As Lisa packed up her equipment, she realized that she was documenting more than just a war story. She was recording the testimony of a species that had learned to fear humanity's capacity for violence. And the worst part was still to come. Lisa Morgan entered the White Room for the third day. Zekathara looked worse than before. The alien's blue skin was pale, and his large black eyes were red around the edges. He had not eaten much since the interviews started. The camera started, rolling again. Lisa did not need to ask questions anymore. Zekathara began talking as soon as the red light came on. Proxima Centauri was where we learned that humans have no limits. When they decide to fight, everything becomes a weapon. Everyone becomes a soldier. The alien's voice was hoarse. General Patricia Wells commanded the human forces there. She implemented what your military calls total war doctrine. We had never seen anything like it. Lisa wrote down the name. General. Wells was famous for her controversial tactics during the war. Total war means that there are no civilians, Zekathara continued. Every human on every world was part of their military effort. Children carried messages. Old people gathered intelligence. Doctors made weapons. Teachers became saboteurs. The alien's chains rattled as he tried to gesture with his hands. We surrounded the Proxima system with our largest fleet, 50,000 soldiers, 100 ships. We thought we could force a quick surrender by showing overwhelming force. What happened instead? The humans turned the entire star system into a fortress, not just the military bases. Everything. Zekathara's voice got quieter. Engineer Marcus Thompson had been working on asteroid mining operations. When the war came, he turned those operations into kinetic bombardment systems. Lisa looked up from her notes. What does that mean? He used mining equipment to launch asteroids at our ships, rocks the size of buildings moving at incredible speeds. Our shields could stop energy weapons and missiles, but they could not stop mountains flying through space. The alien closed his eyes. Thompson died when we finally destroyed his mining station. But he had taught other humans how to use asteroids as weapons. Soon, every mining operation in the system was shooting rocks at us. Lisa felt her stomach tighten. The image of asteroids being used as weapons was terrifying. The worst part was, not the weapons, Zekathara continued. The worst part was who was using them. We intercepted a communication between human resistance groups. A 12-year-old girl named Emma Davis was coordinating attacks across 3 different planets. A child? A child who spoke in code through children's games and songs. She organized supply drops, planned ambushes, and directed sabotage operations, all while pretending to play with dolls and sing nursery rhymes. The alien opened his eyes and stared at the camera. When we finally captured her, she told us that human children learn strategy through games. Every human child plays war games from the time they can walk. They think tactical planning is fun. Lisa stopped writing. The idea of children being involved in military operations was disturbing even for a war story. Emma Davis was not unusual, Zekathara said. We found resistance networks run by teenagers, elderly humans, even disabled people who could not fight directly, but could gather information and coordinate attacks. The alien's voice became more strained. Your General Wells had turned human. Weakness into strength. People who could not be soldiers became spies and saboteurs. People who were not trained for combat became experts at irregular warfare. Lisa could see that Zekthara was struggling to continue. The memories were clearly painful for him. We decided to land ground forces and take the planets one by one. Traditional tactics, overwhelming force applied to specific targets. The alien paused. That was our biggest mistake. Why? Because humans had turned their entire civilization into a weapon. Every building was a potential fortress. Every vehicle was a potential bomb. Every piece of technology was a potential surveillance device. Zekthara's hands started shaking worse than before. We landed on Proxima B expecting to fight an army. Instead, we found a population that had completely integrated military operations into daily life. The alien continued his story with growing distress. The local restaurant owner was actually a communications specialist coordinating orbital strikes. The school principal was running psychological warfare operations against our troops. The hospital administrator was developing biological weapons while still treating our wounded soldiers. Lisa felt like she was hearing about a completely different kind of war than anything she had studied before. How did your soldiers react to this? They started breaking down. Zephyrian military doctrine is based on honor and clear rules of engagement. We know how to fight soldiers. We know how to occupy territory. We do not know how to fight an entire species that has turned every day life into military operations. The alien's voice cracked as he continued. My soldiers started seeing enemies everywhere. They could not trust any human because any human might be a combatant. They could not use any human facility because it might be booby-trapped. They could not eat human food because it might be poisoned. Lisa realized she was documenting the psychological breakdown of an entire military force. The humans made everything into psychological warfare without even trying, Zekthara said. They did not set out to drive us insane. They just fought, the way they always fight. Total commitment. No distinction between military and civilian targets because they do not make that distinction themselves. The alien looked directly at Lisa. Do you understand what I am telling you? Your species does not have civilian populations during wartime. You have military populations and support populations. Everyone contributes to the war effort in some way. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Is that really true? We captured a human librarian named Mrs. Carol Johnson. She was 70 years old and used a walking stick. We thought she was harmless. Then we discovered that she had been using the library's computer system to hack into our military networks and steal tactical information. Zekthara's chains made noise as his whole body shook. She had been doing it for months. An elderly librarian had penetrated our military security systems using public library computers. When we asked her why, she said it was her civic duty. The room was very quiet except for the hum of the space station systems. That was when I understood that we were not fighting a military force. We were fighting a weaponized civilization. Every human was a potential threat. Every human facility was a potential target. Every piece of human technology was a potential weapon. The alien's voice became barely audible. We started calling humans the weapon species in our reports. Not because they had good weapons, but because they were weapons. Their entire culture, their entire way of thinking, everything about them was designed for warfare. Lisa looked at her notes. She had pages of documentation about human tactics that seemed almost unbelievable. How did the Proxima campaign end? It did not end. It just became impossible to continue. We held some territory but could not use it safely. We controlled some populations but could not trust them. We had won battles but were losing the war through exhaustion and paranoia. Zekthara looked up at the ceiling. My commanders ordered a withdrawal from the Proxima system. We left behind 40% of our forces either dead, wounded, or psychologically unfit for duty. The humans had beaten us without winning a single major battle. The alien's voice got very quiet again. That night I sent my final report to the High Command. I told them that humans do not fight wars the way other species fight wars. They become war. They transform their entire existence into military operations. Fighting them is like fighting a storm or a plague. You cannot negotiate with it. You cannot defeat it with normal tactics. You can only try to survive it. Lisa turned off the camera and sat in silence for a moment. She was beginning to understand why the Zephyrian Empire had eventually chosen to end the war. "Tomorrow we talk about Armstrong Station," Zekthera said quietly. "Tomorrow you will understand why my people decided that fighting humans was impossible." As Lisa packed up her equipment, she realized that she was not just documenting a war between two species. She was documenting the moment when one species discovered that another species had evolved specifically for warfare, and the discovery had broken them. The fourth day was different. When Lisa Morgan entered the White Room, Zekthara was crying. The alien's tears were clear like water, but they glowed slightly blue in the artificial light. He did not look up when she entered. Lisa set up her camera, quietly. When the red light came on, Zekthara began speaking without being asked. His voice was broken and hollow. "Armstrong Station was where I lost my faith in victory, where I lost my faith in my own species, where I learned that humans are not just willing to die for their beliefs, they are eager to die if it means their enemies will die too." The alien wiped his glowing tears with his chained hands. "Commander Tony Rodriguez led the defense of Armstrong Station. He was Colonel Amy Rodriguez's brother, the family that taught us that humans fight harder when they have nothing left to lose." Lisa wrote down the name. She was starting to see patterns in human military leadership, families that produced multiple war heroes. Armstrong Station was supposed to fall in 8 days, Zekthera continued. It was a mining facility on a small moon, no strategic value except as a supply depot. 300 human defenders against 5,000 of our troops. The alien's voice got very quiet. "It held out for 8 months. Lisa looked up from her notes. 8 months? 8 months of the most brutal fighting in the history of warfare. Not because the humans were stronger or better equipped, because they refused to understand the concept of defeat. Zekthara closed his eyes and continued. Commander Rodriguez and his people did things that violated every rule of civilized warfare. They turned their own base into a maze of death traps. They used their own wounded soldiers as bait for ambushes. They made weapons out of mining equipment, medical supplies, even their own food. The alien's chains rattled as he tried to move his hands. We thought we controlled the area around the station after the first week. Then we discovered that the humans had built an entire network of tunnels and hidden facilities. They had been preparing for siege warfare while pretending to just mine asteroids. Lisa felt her pen getting heavy in her hand. The story was becoming harder to hear with each day. The humans had people everywhere, Zekthera said. Maria Santos worked in the orbital kitchen that supplied our forces. We thought she was just a cook. She was actually coordinating supply drops and intelligence networks. She poisoned our food, stole our communications, and passed information to the Resistance for 6 months before we caught her. The alien opened his eyes and looked directly at the camera. When we arrested her, she was still cooking dinner for our soldiers. She smiled at them while serving food she had contaminated with mild toxins that would make them sick enough to miss duty shifts. Lisa stopped writing. The image of someone poisoning food while smiling was deeply disturbing. Then there was Sam Miller, the janitor who cleaned our command facilities, Zekthera continued. For 4 months, he had access to every room, every computer, every classified document in our headquarters. He memorized guard schedules, copied security codes, and mapped our defensive positions. The alien's voice cracked. Miller had a photographic memory. He turned custodial work into the most successful intelligence operation of the war. When we finally realized what he was doing, he had already transmitted complete blueprints of our facilities to the human resistance. Lisa realized she was documenting something beyond normal warfare. She was hearing about a complete breakdown of trust between opposing forces. The worst betrayal came from Dr. Alex Turner, Zekathara said. His whole body was shaking now. He was a human doctor who treated our wounded soldiers. We thought he was a symbol of human compassion, someone who put medical ethics above warfare. Was he really doing? He was studying our biology while treating our injuries. Every wounded soldier he helped gave him more information about Zephyrian physiology. He was developing biological weapons specifically designed to kill my people. The alien's voice became barely audible. Dr. Turner saved the lives of hundreds of my soldiers while simultaneously creating weapons that would kill thousands more. He showed genuine care for individual patients while planning genocide against our entire species. Lisa felt sick. The contradiction was almost impossible to understand. When we discovered his research, we confronted him, Zekathara continued. He did not deny it. He said that saving individual lives and protecting his species were both his duty as a doctor. He said the two responsibilities did not conflict in his mind. The alien looked up at the ceiling. That was when I understood that humans can hold completely opposite ideas at the same time without seeing any contradiction. They can show mercy and plan murder with equal sincerity. Lisa realized she was documenting something that went beyond military tactics. She was hearing about a fundamental difference in how humans and aliens understood morality and logic. How did Armstrong Station finally fall? Zekathara's tears started flowing again. It did not fall. It chose to fall. Commander Rodriguez activated something called the Omega Protocol. What is that? They turned the entire station into a kinetic weapon. Instead of surrendering when defeat became inevitable, they launched themselves at our fleet. The alien's voice broke completely. Rodriguez welded everyone into the station's core structure. 300 humans who chose to become ammunition rather than prisoners. They turned their base into a guided missile and crashed it into our command ship. Lisa dropped her pen. They killed themselves? They killed themselves and took 4,000 of my soldiers with them. Rodriguez was on the radio until the moment of impact. He was not screaming or crying. He was singing. The alien looked directly at Lisa with his glowing tears running down his face. He was singing a human song called Amazing Grace while he flew his entire base into our fleet. 300 people singing together as they chose death over defeat. The room was completely silent except for the sound of Zekathara's crying. That was the moment my people broke, he continued. Not because of military defeat, because we realized that humans are willing to extinct themselves rather than surrender. And when they extinct themselves, they take their enemies with them. The alien's voice became very quiet. We had fought for territory, for resources, for honor. Humans fought for something we could not understand, something more important to them than life itself. Lisa felt tears starting in her own eyes. What did your commanders do? They called an emergency meeting of the High Command. For the first time in Zephyrian history, our military leaders voted to retreat from a war we were winning. Zekathara looked at the camera one more time. We could have destroyed every human world. We had the ships and weapons to do it. But we realized that destroying humanity would require destroying ourselves in the process. Every human world would become another Armstrong Station. Every battle would end with our enemies choosing mutual destruction over surrender. The alien's chains made noise as he slumped forward in his chair. My species chose survival over victory. We chose retreat over facing an enemy that would rather die than lose. Lisa turned off the camera and sat in silence. She was beginning to understand that the war had not ended because one side defeated the other. It had ended because one side chose not to face complete mutual annihilation. Tomorrow is the last day, Zekathara said quietly. Tomorrow I tell you about the real reason we stopped fighting. Tomorrow you learn why humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. As Lisa packed up her equipment, she realized that she was documenting more than a war story. She was documenting the moment when one species discovered that another species had no survival instincts that would prevent them from choosing mutual destruction, and that discovery had ended the war, before it could end both species. On the fifth day, Lisa Morgan found Zekthara sitting perfectly still in the White Room. No tears, no shaking, no visible emotion at all. The alien looked like a statue made of blue stone. Only his eyes moved when she entered. The camera began, rolling for the final time. Lisa did not need to say anything. Zekthara had been waiting to finish his story. "I volunteered for this interview against direct orders from the Zephyrian High Command," he began. His voice was calm now, like someone who had accepted something terrible. "They want to classify all information about human warfare. They want to pretend the war never happened." The alien looked directly into the camera. "I am here because the galaxy needs to understand what humans really are. Not the peaceful traders and explorers they pretend to be now. The weaponized survivors they become when threatened." Lisa wrote carefully. This was clearly the most important part of Zekthara's testimony. 3 years ago, we captured a human admiral named Grace Cooper," the alien continued. "She was taken during the early fighting when we still thought humans could be broken by conventional interrogation methods. What happened to her? We held her for 2 years in our most secure facility. We thought isolation and psychological pressure would eventually break her spirit and make her cooperate." Zekthara's expression did not change, but his voice got quieter. "Admiral Cooper did not break. She did something else. She studied us." Lisa looked up from her notes. "Studied you?" "For 2 years, she observed her guards, learned our language, analyzed our behavior patterns, and mapped our psychological weaknesses. When her rescue finally came, she knew more about Zephyrian military psychology than most of our own officers." The alien paused and then continued with something that sounded like respect and terror mixed together. "Cooper's debriefing reports taught your military more about us in a few weeks than we had learned about you in 3 years of warfare. She had turned captivity into reconnaissance. She had made being a prisoner into a military assignment." Lisa felt a chill. The idea of someone using their own imprisonment as an intelligence-gathering opportunity was both impressive and frightening. "Admiral Cooper told your commanders that Zephyrians fight for honor and glory, but fear shame and humiliation more than death. She showed them how to use our own cultural values against us." Zekthara looked away from the camera for a moment. "The psychological warfare that followed broke more of my soldiers than any physical battle. Humans began broadcasting messages that made us question our honor, our purpose, our worthiness as warriors." The alien's voice became very quiet. "Cooper had learned that we measure our value as individuals by our success as soldiers. Your people used that knowledge to destroy our morale without firing a shot." Lisa realized she was documenting something. Beyond military intelligence, she was hearing about the systematic psychological deconstruction of an entire military culture. "But that was not the worst thing Admiral Cooper did," Zekthara continued. "The worst thing was what she taught your leaders about human nature." "What do you mean?" "She explained to them that humans are not just warriors. You are survivors who have spent your entire evolutionary history learning to fight. Every challenge your species faced made you better at warfare. Every enemy you defeated made you stronger." The alien looked directly at Lisa. "Cooper told your military commanders that humans do not just wage war. You weaponize everything, including your own suffering. You turn defeats into learning experiences. You transform your own deaths into tactical advantages." Lisa stopped writing. The implications of what Zekthara was saying were enormous. Admiral Cooper's analysis concluded that humans are not a military species that learn to be peaceful. You are a survival species that learn to appear peaceful when it serves your purposes. The alien's voice got even quieter. She warned your own leaders that humanity's greatest strength is also its greatest danger. Your willingness to sacrifice everything for survival means you cannot be trusted to stop fighting when victory becomes impossible. Lisa felt her pen shaking in her hand. What did she recommend? That humans should never be allowed to feel truly threatened again, because a threatened humanity will destroy everything rather than accept defeat. Zekthara was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, more careful. There is something else. Something I was not supposed to tell anyone. Something the High Command classified at the highest level. Lisa leaned forward. What? The war did not end because we chose to retreat. The war ended because we discovered something about human space that terrified our entire government. The alien looked around the room like he expected to be arrested at any moment. Our intelligence services discovered that humans had been preparing for interstellar warfare for decades before we ever made contact. Your entire expansion into space was a military operation disguised as peaceful exploration. Lisa felt her stomach drop. What do you mean? Every human colony was built to military specifications. Every trade route was designed to be a supply line. Every civilian facility could be converted to military use within hours. Your entire civilization in space was a hidden fortress waiting for someone to attack it. Zekthara's voice became barely audible. We realized that humans had been expecting galactic warfare and had prepared for it by turning their entire society into a weapons system. We had not invaded a peaceful species. We had walked into a trap that had been decades in the making. The alien looked directly at the camera one final time. Admiral Cooper's final report to your government had one recommendation that convinced our spies to end the war immediately. What recommendation? She told your leaders that the Zephyrian Empire was not strong enough to require humanity's full military potential. She suggested that your people were holding back most of their capabilities to avoid frightening the rest of the galaxy. Lisa dropped her pen completely. Holding back? Cooper's analysis indicated that everything we had seen was humans fighting at maybe 20% of their actual capacity. She estimated that a fully mobilized humanity could conquer the known galaxy within 10 years. The room was completely silent. That report was intercepted by our intelligence services, Zekthara continued. When the High Command read it, they realized that continuing the war would force humans to reveal their true capabilities. And if the galaxy saw what humans could really do when fully mobilized, every species in known space would unite to destroy you before you could destroy them. The alien's voice became very calm and certain. We ended the war to save both our species from that outcome. We retreated to prevent humanity from being forced to show the galaxy what you really are. Lisa stared at the alien in shock. What are you saying? I am saying that the peace we have now exists only because most species do not understand what happened during our war. They think humans are just another military species that got lucky. Zekthara looked out the window at the stars. But some of us know the truth. Humans are not just another species. You are evolution's answer to the question of how to survive in a hostile universe. You are survivors who learn to turn everything, including your own nature, into weapons. The alien turned back to the camera. The galaxy is safe as long as humans feel safe. But if your species ever feels truly threatened again, if you ever decide that peace has failed and survival requires warfare, then every other species in the galaxy will learn what we learned, which is that humans do not fight wars. Humans become war. And when that happens, the only choice is surrender or mutual annihilation. Zekthara sat back in his chair. That is why I am telling this story, so that the galaxy understands that keeping humans peaceful is not just good policy. It is the only way to prevent the complete militarization of galactic civilization. Lisa turned off the camera and sat in stunned silence. Miss Morgan, Zekthara said quietly, when you broadcast this interview, some people will say I am exaggerating, that I am making humans sound more dangerous than they really are. The aliens' chains rattled one final time. Those people should look at your history. Look at what humans did to each other before you had enemies from other worlds. Look at how you turned a planet with limited resources into a training ground for galactic warfare. Zekathara stood up as much as his restraints would allow. Then they should ask themselves one question. If humans were willing to do those things to their own species for practice, what would they be willing to do to alien species for survival? As Lisa packed up her equipment for the last time, she realized that she had not just documented a war story. She had documented a warning, a message to the galaxy about the true nature of humanity. And she was not sure the galaxy was ready to hear it.